Hello, my name's Becky Safe. Welcome back to my YouTube channel. In this video, we're going to take a look at how you can breathe more life into your music and also explain why you would do this. The timestamps to this video are below in the description so that you can skip to your favorite section. And before we jump into it, I do have a brand new alias on SoundCloud where you can get free drum and bass downloads. So music that I make, you can download for free, and you can check that out in the SoundCloud link in the description as well. Breathing life into music. Why would we do this? Well, if you think about it, with a computer, you're drawing in the MIDI notes in the piano roll, and then you're quantizing them perfectly to the grid. Everything is in time on the grid. The waves in a VST, like the saw and the sine wave, they are perfect waves, and so they would repeat over and over again the exact same way every single time. Music performed by a human is not so perfect. The way that a drummer hits a snare drum is going to be different every single time. Different timing, different velocity, strength, speed, position on the skin. It's all going to be slightly different. And humanizing your music is really important because at the end of the creation process, on the other end of your piece of music is a human being. So because the listener is a human, you want to humanize your music so that the listener can subconsciously hear those imperfections and the realness in your songs. All right, let's get into it. So the first one is to offset your MIDI after quantization. Here's some MIDI that I have recorded into Ableton, and you can see here that it's slightly off the grid because I performed this in using the keyboard. Now, what a lot of people would do is that they would sweep over all of the notes, they would right click or control a new and quantize, and then everything is now on the grid. Which is perfectly in time, but it sounds very computerized as opposed to what it was originally performed as. And so you can adjust your quantize settings so that you can move them at smaller increments, or if you've already quantized it like this, add the human element back in by slightly offsetting your MIDI notes from the grid. You're not moving them so far off the grid that it becomes noticeably out of time, but you're moving them slightly off grid so that you reintroduce that human element after you've quantized the notes. Let's take a look at velocity. So velocity is how hard the note is struck when it's played, and if you like to draw your notes in like this, here we've got some notes that I've drawn in the MIDI note editor, and they are all the same velocity because I've just double clicked or used the pencil tool to draw in the notes. And so they're all the same velocity. If you drag open here, velocity going from 1 to 127, and this is the default line of all of the velocities of the notes that are drawn in. And you can really hear the computerization of these notes. It sounds very computerized, and so you can switch up the velocities by just dragging up and down on these velocity lines here, and then you're going to introduce that human element. I'm sure you can tell by now that these differences are super subtle, and this is what you're looking for. It's going to make a subconscious difference to the listener. It's not going to be very obvious, but you as a producer are looking for these subtle ways to introduce humanization into your music. Okay, so let's look at automation. Automation using the LFO. LFO in Ableton I love, it's in the modulators. Add the LFO to the hi-hat track, and with a hi-hat, if you remember back to the beginning of the video when I was saying about a drummer hitting the drum in different places with different strengths, this is going to change the color and the timbre of the resulting sound. And so it's not going to change the timing or the length, it's just going to change the characteristics of that sound. And so we're going to use coloring processing, and we're going to map the LFO to the processing, and then that's going to slightly change each time this hi-hat is being being played. A saturator in its basic form introduces harmonics into the sound, and so if we map this moving LFO to the drive parameter of the saturator, it's going to introduce and then take those harmonics away at varying intervals as the hi-hat is playing. So we just map to the drive, and now you can see that the drive is switching up and down, which is quite a drastic motion. So let's decrease the depth on the LFO, and you can also change your wave, so you don't have to use a sine wave. Let's just use a random. So we're now randomly moving up and down, and you can see it's randomly switching it on the drive. It's a bit jittery at the moment, it's a bit static, so let's smooth that out. So now you can see that the numbers are moving in a bit more of a smooth way. Let's increase the rate. And then you can increase the range as well, so that you're working within a very specific range on the LFO. And so you can see on the drive, we're now moving ever so slightly up and down. You can probably increase the range on that a little bit more. So what we're doing here is we're now introducing movement to the saturator without touching anything. It's automation. And so let's take a listen to this hi-hat before and after the LFO movement. It's very computerized, very same. It's the same sample every time, same thing. But now let's introduce the saturator and the LFO. We're moving the drive on the saturator. You can hear that subtle variation in how the hi-hat comes across. And so this is then introducing that human element into the hi-hat without being really obvious and overpowering for the listener. If you have any ways that you like to humanize your music, then please feel free to drop them in the comments section below. The number one way to humanize your music is to do live recording. Live recording is done by a human being, and therefore it is full of imperfections. It's different velocities, different note lengths, different timings. It is all imperfect, and therefore if you live record something in, you're already introducing that human element, and then you just need to go and tidy it up with a little bit of quantization and moving a few bits around. Here's my live recording of different notes of different lengths, and you can see here that it's slightly off grid. It's also got different velocities throughout, so we have the entire human element in there. However, for computer music and for electronic music especially, and really anything that is produced for the modern commercial market, you do need to have an element of timing, because people are going to be performing your music and it needs to be in time. So you can see here that things are slightly off the grid. So if you want to, instead of quantizing this by right clicking on quantize, if you want to just drag them to the bar line, you could also grab a group of them and drag a group to the bar line. And so you're maintaining the groove in those notes, but you're slightly adjusting so that it fits on the grid. Drag a group of them to the grid. You're a human, and therefore when you record your music, you are transferring the humanization element into your tracks. So wherever possible, record your music in. Thanks for watching. Like I said, if you did get something out of this video, please consider hitting subscribe, like, and dropping a comment below to let me know what you thought. My name's Becky Safe, and I will see you for another one. Bye!